Hey, it's Sam from Sugar Spun Run, and today we are going to be making chocolate pot de crème. So pot de crème is a classic French dessert that literally translates to little pot of cream, or pot of cream, I should say, but we're making little pots. This recipe might sound kind of fancy, but it comes together really simply. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do is get your oven preheating to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. We want a lower temperature for this recipe because it's important that we don't overcook the creme that we're making, which is just like this creamy chocolate custard. If you don't already have an oven thermometer in your oven, this is a good time to buy one. An oven that's running too hot is going to leave you with less than desirable results, and it's just going to be a problem with most of your baking. Okay, the first ingredient that you need today is chocolate. You're going to need 8 ounces of a quality chocolate baking bar. I recommend using a 60% or slightly darker chocolate, though you could use a semi-sweet baking bar if you want, just your results will be a little bit sweeter. Now I'm going to go ahead and break this chocolate into very small pieces, and then I'm going to melt it. You can melt it either on a double boiler, stirring frequently, or you can melt it in 20-second intervals in the microwave. I'll be just doing mine in the microwave. Now with a lot of these recipes, what you're going to find is they have you finely chop the chocolate and then pour a steaming or simmering cream over top and melt it that way. The issue I ran into with that technique is no matter how fine I made the chocolate, no matter how much time I spent with it, we were always ending up with small little grains, and those always ended up in the final product. So when you taste your pot de crème, you want it to be completely silky smooth. You don't want to have little bits of chocolate in there. This technique of melting the chocolate before we add the cream is going to give us completely silky smooth results. All right, I've broken up my chocolate. You could chop yours instead if you don't want to get all manual with it. This is going to the microwave, 20-second intervals, stirring in between because we don't want to accidentally seize our chocolate. Then we're in a worse place than we would have been if we just used finely chopped chocolate to begin with. All right, once your chocolate is completely smooth, let's hop over to the stovetop where we're going to prepare our cream mixture. You're just going to need a medium-sized saucepan, and to this we're going to add 2 cups of heavy cream. You may find it in your grocery store as heavy cream, heavy whipping cream, or double cream. Any of these will work here in today's recipe. Now, I didn't want to use all cream because that can make the pot de crème a little bit too thick for my liking, so I prefer to temper it with a little bit of milk. We're just using 2/3 cup of whole milk here. And I'll usually add my salt here as well. You'll just need a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm just using table salt, but a super fine sea salt would work really well too. So we're just going to heat this over medium heat, just a notch below medium heat actually. I don't want it to be too hot, and we'll just heat it until the cream begins to steam. And I'm just going to whisk this a little bit here. I want that salt incorporated, and I just want it to heat evenly. So even though we're not using this liquid mixture to melt our chocolate, it's still important that it be nice and warm, otherwise it's not going to incorporate well with our melted chocolate. We're steaming. Okay, cream is steaming. So let's get rid of our stovetop. All right, so we're going to switch over to a whisk with our chocolate, and we're going to start melting our chocolate, and we will very slowly, gradually add our steaming cream mixture. Now I start by adding just like a 1/4 cup and whisking that in, because if you add too much at once, it's going to separate and you're not going to have a smooth mixture. Hard to do this one-handed. There we go. So once that's incorporated, we'll add, we'll add a little more. You don't have to be so aggressive. And every time you add the cream, everything's going to look a little bit separated, but so long as you don't add too much at once and you keep whisking, everything should come together just fine. I love these saucepans because they have a little lip on them. Oh, chocolate, excuse me. But anyway, that little lip there makes pouring very easy. I got a little bit sloppy with it because sometimes I get a little anxious on camera, but when you pour with a saucepan with a lip, it should flow nice and smooth and you shouldn't have any spilling down the sides. You shouldn't have that. You shouldn't have a lot of it anyway. It's a big difference pouring from a pan like this compared to one that doesn't have that lip on it. So if you cook a lot, bake a lot, use your cookware a lot, it's a really good idea to invest in a nice set of pots. Now that I've added about half the cream, I'm going to get a little bit more aggressive with adding it. And another thing, I'm doing a lot of whisking, but I'm not getting super aggressive with the whisking. I feel like I've said that word too many times for a French dessert recipe. Aggressive. Who thought it would be so aggressive? My point is, you don't want to incorporate a lot of air into this mixture, or else you can end up with pot de creme that sort of separate in the oven or end up with a lot of bubbles in it. So I'm not aggressively whisking like I might do with egg whites or something like that. I'm just trying to get everything nicely combined. That looks pretty good. I'm going to grab my spatula and just scrape the bottom because I want to make sure any chocolate that is in this bowl is well melted and incorporated into the cream. Beautiful. This should be nice and smooth. Now let's move on to our eggs. So for today's recipe, we're going to be using 6 large egg yolks. Ideally, these should be room temperature. I'm going to crack my whites into a separate bowl. Ooh, or I'm just gonna make a mess. This is why we do a separate bowl. See if I can save that yolk. I can't, it's dog food. Let's start over. Let's try that again. Crack your egg into a separate bowl. If you have an egg separator, you can use that, no problem. I just like to use the shell halves and pass that yolk back and forth, for better or worse. Sometimes it works better than other times. Then we'll drop our egg yolk in the bowl. So we'll need 6 of these. So that creates a lot of leftover egg whites. You can save them for use in one of my other recipes, like my angel food cake or angel food cupcakes. Those are great ways to use up egg whites, but personally, I'm going to be saving mine to be making meringues. I think I'll make some chocolate meringues. 3. Crack my green egg. I really like that. I didn't think I'd like the green eggs, but I really do. 4. 5, one more. 6, and just like that, we've gone through half a dozen eggs. Or if you're like me, a little more than that. All right, to this, we're going to add 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. Go ahead and grab a whisk, and we're going to whisk this until it's nicely combined. So once again, I don't like to be super vigorous when I'm whisking. I just kind of want to be gentle and whisk until I have a nice uniform mixture. So I just sort of gently whisk this for about 60 seconds. The color may lighten a little bit. As long as it looks nice and uniform, you're good to go. So let's grab our chocolate, and we're going to gradually add this to our eggs. We don't want to add it too quickly just because this could still be pretty hot. We could end up cooking our eggs, and we don't want to do that. Since this bowl doesn't have a nice lip on it, I'll usually grab a measuring cup and just use that to slowly whisk in the chocolate mixture. Once I get low enough in my bowl, I'll just pour in the rest. Because after those first couple splashes of cream are added, our eggs are tempered, so we don't have to be quite as careful. Last thing I like to add is just a little bit of vanilla extract. This is just a ½ teaspoon. It helps enhance the flavor of the chocolate. Just a nice addition to make it a little bit more rich. All right, so the final step before this goes into the oven is we're going to run it through a fine mesh strainer. I like to pour this into a large measuring cup because this is going to make it super easy for me to portion the pot de creme into the pots, the little ramekins that we're going to be using. So I'll just rest my strainer on that to the best of my ability. Prop it up there a little bit. And let's pour this through, trying not to spill any. So this step is important because if there are any bits of chocolate that weren't completely melted and weren't completely smooth, if there are any bits of egg that accidentally got cooked, we're going to catch all of those so we have a nice smooth pot de creme. So you know, despite everything I did with the chocolate, I still have a little bit of chocolate lingering there. I don't want that in my pot de creme. We're gonna leave that behind. It's just a little bit though, so don't feel like you're going to be shorting yourself on chocolate flavor. Okay, for this recipe, we are going to be using 6 8-ounce ramekins. Now, if you have a nice deep 9-inch pan, you can go ahead and place them in there so long as the ramekins aren't touching each other. If you don't have a 9-inch pan that's deeper than the height of your ramekins, use a roasting pan instead. Now let's go ahead and pour this into our ramekins. You're going to use about 2/3 cup per ramekin, I have found. This one got shorted a little bit. All right, so the reason that we had to put our ramekins in a pan is because they need a water bath. I'm not a big water bath person. I do not use one in my cheesecakes. They're not necessary there, but sometimes they are necessary. So today we are going to be using a water bath. Now we're just going to be adding water to the pan until we have filled it enough that each ramekin is about 2/3 of the way covered. Now I prefer to use water that is neither too hot nor too cold. So this is about room temperature. I always get so nervous because I don't want to get any water in my ramekin. Okay, now we're ready to take these over to the center rack of our 325-degree Fahrenheit oven. I have found for me, these generally need to take 35 to 40 minutes until they are cooked through. However, I generally recommend people start checking them at 30 minutes because if you are using ramekins that are more shallow or a different size pan, yours could end up cooking a little bit faster than mine. And this is something you really don't want to overcook, so better to check it a little bit earlier. So the way you're going to be able to tell that this is finished baking is if you give the pan a little bit of a jiggle. You'll notice that the edges seem set, but the centers are still going to be jiggly and wobbly. If you're worried about the internal temperature, use an instant read thermometer and look for an internal temperature of at least 160 degrees. You don't really want to go too much higher than that because that can negatively affect the texture of your pot de creme. All right, be very careful because you don't want to splash any of your water bath water into your ramekins, which I have done before. Okay, so I don't know if it's hard for you to see on camera, but I'm jiggling these. The edges are pretty set, but we're still getting some motion in the center of the creme. So what we do now is we're going to let these sit in the water bath for another 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, we will carefully remove them to a cooling rack. The reason we let them cool in the water bath for 15 minutes is because we want them to gradually come to room temperature. We don't want to shock them by letting them cool too quickly, which can negatively affect the texture. So after 15 minutes, we are going to very carefully remove these to a cooling rack where they're going to cool completely. That usually takes somewhere between 30 and 60 minutes. Now, I'm going to use my hands, but I'm going to be very careful that I do not touch the water because the water is super hot. Also, I ideally like to wipe off the bottom of each ramekin, but right now we're just doing the best we can. You know, sometimes you only have one hand, right, Luke? Mm-hmm. So once these have reached room temperature or are really close to room temperature, then you're going to want to take them over to your refrigerator. Now, I like to wrap mine with plastic wrap before I put them in the fridge, and I would recommend doing that as well. Once you finally have them in the fridge, they're going to need to chill for at least another 2 hours before you can dig in. Okay, it's been 2 hours since we put these in the fridge, so it's finally time to dig in. Luke, pick yours.
Green one.
Okay. Mommy will take the blue one. We'll take the plastic wrap off.
Yep.
And what's the last thing with these pot de creme need?
I'm gonna do whipped cream one.
We're gonna do whipped cream on it. Go ahead and add that. Do you wanna do it on mine too?
Yeah.
Well, Mommy would like a little more whipped cream than that, I think, actually. There you go. There you go. Now we're talking.
That too much?
No, there's no such thing. All right, that is how you make chocolate pot de creme, not pot de creme, as I may have called it at one point. Before we do the taste test, I want to make sure you guys get a good look at the texture. It's nice and silky smooth. Thanks to all of those tricks we did. This is the perfect pot de creme in my opinion, and I think you're going to love it. If you try this one at home, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you for watching.
We'll see you next time.
How is it, Luke?
Mm-hmm.
Did you try any of the chocolate or just whipped cream?
Chocolate and whipped cream.
Okay. I love this. I seriously love it. That's really good. Beep, beep, blooper.
I need more.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's plenty.